It was a long overdue visit to Bletchley Park, the government's secret intelligence station synonymous with the great British codebreakers of the Second World War, that reminded me of my 2 consecutive weeks' visit to another classic English country house, Wheathampstead House, in the village of the same name, tucked away in the green fields north of St Albans in Hertfordshire, about 30 miles from London. A blink and you'll miss it sort of place, but my reason for visiting in 1968 was at a time when I was setting out on what turned out to be a brief journey into a career in chartered accountancy. I was there as number 2 to one Albert Boulos, an Egyptian national and the auditor-accountant responsible for the financial audit of Murphy & Son Limited, a business headquartered in this large country house. Murphy's are major suppliers of chemicals to the brewing industry and have more recently moved lock, stock and barrel to their long-standing factory in Nottingham. Their accounting and laboratory functions were carried out at Wheathampstead, so lots of heavy ledgers and white coats around the place. These were the days when all books and records were written up by hand before the advent of computer-based accounting. My first view of Wheathampstead House was at the end of a stately journey from Sheffield in Albert's large Mercedes-Benz, which I seem to remember he had brought over to England from Egypt. Why he moved himself and his family over to England, I can't remember. Anyway, this wonderful house and those who worked there seemed to me to be stuck in a 1940s time warp. It was like walking onto a film set. Magnificent oak-panelled rooms, suites of furniture with floral patterns, a drift of cigarette smoke, and overcooked cabbage in the air, and hushed tones everywhere. Maybe what Bletchley Park was a bit like in the day. Very much England being very English at this point of time in its 20th century history. We seemed to have free rein to walk around this large country house as we wanted. Well, no one actually stopped us doing this, so over a 2-week period I got to know it well, with the ghosts of another age ever present. I was obviously struck by this, as the memories are very clear as I write this nearly 60 years later, and they're fond memories. I enjoyed it there. We were billeted at a hotel in St Albans, close to what is left of the remains of the Roman town of Verulamium, and each night, returning to St Albans, Albert would say his goodbyes and disappear into London to see friends and family, he said, without inviting me, not even once. But he was in his 50s and I was an 18-year-old. Not a problem, though. After one of these drop-offs outside the hotel, my mind was turning to a cool pint of beer when I was intercepted by the receptionist, who said that my father had called and that I should phone him back as soon as possible. A feeling of impending doom came over me, as apparent emergencies like this are not the norm in our family. At this time, my father was only 58, but not able to work due to ill health, so I had no reason to think it was likely to be good news. I duly made the call, and my dad answered. "Rob, I have some news. I received my usual weekly envelope from Vernon's Pools, which I was all ready to chuck in the bin when I noticed it wasn't the usual colour envelope, although it was still said Vernon's on the outside. So I opened it, and inside was a cheque for just over £2,000. I've won on the football pools." Now, this was significant in their lives, as my parents' finances were at an all-time low, and they were worried about what the future would bring, with no likelihood of future employment to meet their outgoings, and small pensions which were years away. But £2,000 in 1968 is around £45,000 in 2026, and so you can see that it was a very decent and most welcome injection of funds at a critical time in their lives. Needless to say, one pint of beer quickly became a few in celebration of their tax-free windfall. That was my dad's one and only win on the pools, and was not enough to buy a country house, it was very timely and gratefully received.